Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barbin. Let's talk football.
All right, we're talking about the Cotton Bowl. Ohio State defeated Texas, and now they're on their way to the national championship game. And this is kind of where the preseason pundits would have expected Ohio State to arrive, and they have. So maybe not on the route they thought it would happen, specifically the major stumble with Michigan. But since that, they've looked pretty solid. What'd you think of this game?
It was a good game. It was really the defense was very present, I think, for both teams. Like, it was the defense really dictated how the game went. It wasn't as it comfortably hit the under, and both teams struggled to run the ball, and it's really a testament to how good the defense was. And and there was interceptions and fumbles and caused by the defensive havoc. So, and I really noticed it at the end of the game, like when Texas needed to score near the end of the fourth quarter, and Ewers just had no time to throw, and on multiple possessions, and that's really what the difference was, I think.
Do you think Ewers, a couple of the sacks he took earlier in the game, I saw one comment that he sort of walked into the pressure instead of avoid it. It's like he stepped up into the pocket when the pocket was collapsing, when I guess you would say the more aware mobile quarterback would have recognized that's not the way out of this one, or to buy time would have been get out to the left or the right. Or do you think the pockets were collapsing so fast it's not really there was nothing he could do when it collapses like that?
Yeah, it did look like that. So it looked like he stepped up into the thing, but I think it's more about, you can't, if you scramble against a fast defense, and both these defenses are fast, you're going to get killed. And so I think they try to tell you to step up into the pocket, and normally you get better protection than that. So I think it's because normally you don't collapse it from like the two guards in the A gap, just from the defensive line. So it looked like that a little bit, but I don't think there was any other option for that. So
Right. Yeah, I have a note here that both defensive lines looked really strong in this game and were causing all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, both defensive lines looked amazing, and especially like they weren't 100%. Like JT Tuamalo was sprained his ankle, was heavily taped, was limited on the sideline, but still came back, and he was
had a good game. Yeah.
No, and he had a great game, and even at the end, because with an ankle sprain, it makes it harder to do side to side or lateral movement, and so he ended up doing the bull rush more, which was totally working against the tackle. It really couldn't stop him. So even with the limited mobility, he was still getting a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, he was still productive. So Ohio State came out. They stopped Texas. Texas had that one awesome catch by Golden. Yeah. And then they stuffed them on the third down and the fourth down. Then Ohio State marched straight down the field, and it almost looked like, oh, here we go again. Like that was dominating. But then Texas weathered that little storm, settled in, and then we got 8 punts in a row.
Yeah.
Between the two teams. And I thought, as I was making my notes, it was like critical penalty, kill drive, punt. Critical penalty, kill drive, punt. And that was my notes for like an hour in the first half. That's just, both teams just kept shooting themselves in the foot. Yeah. And it was either a hold or TreVeyon Henderson with that terrible play after him and Helms. What do you guys do at this point in the game? You both take just an arrogant, can't control my emotions penalty, and aren't you supposed to be leaders on the team? And both of them, I don't know if the Helms one really, I can't remember if it affected him, but I know Henderson's completely killed that drive.
Yes.
And my thought was, these defenses are playing so good on both sides of the ball. You can't afford a holding penalty or a false start. You can't actually afford almost anything. If you're not staying ahead of the chains, these defenses will. You're not going to do the 2nd and 20 or the 3rd and 9 and convert. And they just, that whole middle of the first half, it went from looking like we're going to have a wild game to just an hour of punting.
Yep.
And then at the very end of the half, a little bit of fireworks right at the very end of the half there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's exactly right. And it was, it was a really good defense. Like that, that's the penalties were killers, but it was the deep. Like they had 14 plays for 43 yards at one point. Ohio State did after that
Yeah.
opening touchdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the defense, rebounding and playing really well against that. But
Yep.
no, that's one of my main notes that I have here that you pointed out. The penalties were killing me. Not only like killing me, killing like
Yeah.
the average fan
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah. It
Because
was
as a fan, there's nothing worse than seeing your team start to put it together against another team with a really good defense and then shoot themselves in the foot.
right.
And
Right.
it's which is an absolute killer, right? For stuff that's the kind of stuff that's 100% avoidable, right? Like
Yes.
you're
Yes.
reacting by punching someone in the face or pointing at them when they're on the ground. Like you're 100% in control of not doing that.
Right.
So it's no, the penalties were brutal. Like yeah. So
Ohio State had nine penalties for 75 yards, and Texas had 5. And we said coming into this game, Texas would have to play a relatively clean game, and so they had a lot less penalties. But man, the penalties both teams did take killed such a number of drives, like offensive procedural penalties or stupid penalties after the play.
Yeah.
So both teams got in their own way for sure.
Yeah.
For major chunks of this game.
But the defense was really good. Like that's what also, those two, like when your defense is really good for 8 plays and then you have a really bad interception or a bad, penalty, like that stops the drive. Like, but it's the defense put them in that position where all of a sudden, like, 1 second and 20 and they can't overcome it.
Well, and that's what I was trying to make the point that against these kind of defenses playing at this level, one mess up a penalty on your offense and you've essentially killed the drive because those defenses are good enough to not let you get any more yards.
The one of my other major notes that I have written here is what happened to Smith. He gets over 150 yards 2 games in a row. He had 1 catch for 3 yards. So that's either the best defensive performance in the history of college football, or like he had a bad game, or they weren't scripting for him, or I don't know how that's possible. He looked unstoppable against Oregon. And we barely even saw him this game.
I have to believe, and I haven't looked at enough people who do post-game analysis to see like exactly how that happened. My assumption, if we go back and look, they were spending extra time and had extra people trying to take him away, and my thought is they must have done we're going to take him away, and if you can beat us with everyone else, fine, you can beat us with everyone else. But it's not going to be him. It's not going to be. And as a coach, you would think we're idiots if he goes off for another 180 yards, 3 touchdowns. It's like, well, how much more warning do you need? He just did this to the last 2 teams in a row. It's here it comes, and whatever it takes, allocate the resources to slow him down, and that's when you realize, well, there's just too many players on this team. So you stop him, and then you've got Ebuka. Tate had a great game.
He looked fantastic.
Basically, to me, my read on it was everyone else was getting the spoils of the Texas's strategy to take away Smith. And then Henderson goes off, and Judkins was playing. So remember, a couple weeks ago we said there's 4 game breakers on this team.
Yep.
And and also, I mean, those are the big 4, but Tate was also really good too. So what can you do when you take away one? Well, you have just so many more resources. And when Howard is playing well, and boy, was he! I have another note: Howard throwing balls into super tight windows.
Yes,
like all game long, he was. Boy, did he have! He had a set of balls for the way he was throwing. He was throwing it over the middle, three defenders with anticipation, right when the guy needed to be there. A couple of them, the announcers didn't even know what to say because it's not like, oh, complete to whoever. You notice the announcers would pause and like, did he catch that? Like there's defenders everywhere. And it's like, oh yeah, he's got it. And the announcer, like, I guess it was Fowler, he was a little surprised, like, oh yeah, he's like the first and 10. So he was on. Like that was at least he was going for broke. He was not holding back with the way he was playing.
Yep, for sure. So no, just to finish that point, I think you're right. I think they took the plan was to take away Smith, which they did, and then you have to beat forcing them to beat them with other people, which they did.
They did.
And a big part of that is Will Howard because he played great, like you said, and putting it. And the only interception he had was when they were trying to force it to Smith. Just to finish that point.
That's a good point.
He was double teamed, so that was. But yeah, and another note that I had was that this is a surprisingly close game. Like neither team was able to run the ball. They're both under 100 yards rushing.
Yep.
Both of them passed for like just over 280 yards. And the only thing that makes the difference is this 75-yard screen pass, and then the Sawyer, the fumble return for a touchdown. Like if you take those away, then all of a sudden it's 14-14, right? And those are sort of some, I don't want to say fluke stuff, but it was a perfect, that screen pass was a perfect call when they're playing really sort of the prevent defense. And because they made a point of this on the commentary, that it gives the offensive line like 20 to 25 yards head start running for the blocking. And then all of a sudden, when you have a full speed TreVeyon Henderson, you're not gonna be able to stop him. You know what I mean? So
it was, that was, geez. I mean, maybe it's just not supposed to go. You just don't expect a screen pass. It was a good call. It was a conservative call.
Yeah.
It was the call I expected to see in the Notre Dame game.
Yep.
When instead of inexplicably throwing the ball over across the field, he could just maybe a screen pass at that point. I think we said that, maybe a screen pass, a run, and if you get something, fine. If you don't, but don't put the ball in harm's way.
Yeah.
And okay, so you get lucky, and Henderson's got that kind of speed too. So it looked like 2 or 3 defenders all collided into each other, taking like a bad angle, I don't know if they're situational awareness. They didn't realize they were all converging in the same spot. It's almost like they were too excited and didn't have kind of lane integrity. I guess I'm talking like it's a kickoff, but a couple of people, that shouldn't have happened. Somebody was out of position. Let's say it that way.
Yeah. And I rewound and watched it a couple times because before they snapped the ball, number 4, who's Andrew Makuba, one of the safeties.
Yeah.
He was sprinting back. So he was 30 yards back from the line of scrimmage when they snapped the ball. So I'm like, what happened to that guy? Like, where
did he end up on that play?
And it was just like you said, it was sort of, they didn't have a good gap integrity, which really felt like a kickoff or a punt return. And that's all it takes is just one hole in the wedge, and then that's what they exposed it. So it was really
felt
surprising.
Like there was only one layer of defense to get through, not like 3.
Yeah. So no, very, very surprising, but like excellent play call at that time against that defense. So
I mean, I doubt he expected it to go for a touchdown, but it's the right call. Maybe you get even the announcer's like, oh, maybe you'll get a couple of, then he's like, oh, well, wait, and he's gone. Right.
Yeah.
So
the other thing too, so this was, as I said before, it was a surprisingly close game. So, if you take away that screen pass and just that weird fumble return for 80 yards, it's 14-14. It was also 14-21, like with Texas driving and first and goal. That's the John Barbin, favorite right there. Get first and goal twice and coming away with nothing. Like not, what I mean? And so
it just kills me every time that happens.
Yeah.
I know. And I don't know if they have the analytics, and we can always say after the fact that look what happened. But man, it's got to be new. It's got to be an analytic thing for how many times people leave points on the board in the red zone, and it's like field goals are just passé. It's like 3 points. But again, to me, the thought process there is you don't trust your defense to get a stop and get the ball back, or you just expect them to march right down the field and score a touchdown. Like, what if you can hold them to a field goal? It's just like it kind of smacks of this concept that, well, it has to happen right here because clearly we can't stop them. But it's not like either team was marching up and down the field all game long here. It wasn't. Yeah. This was a weird game of a bunch of stops and penalties and punts, then 2 or 3 moments of explosions, then right back to like turnovers and punts and interceptions, and then an explosion again. It was kind of this odd. I guess the flow of the game, or lack of a flow, or a strange pattern to this game. As soon as it felt like you had a sense of what the game was doing, it kind of did something else. Like that last minute of the first half Texas finally gets back in the game, and then they immediately give the momentum right back. That was such a killer.
Less than 30 seconds left on the clock. Less than 30 seconds. And for that play to happen like that was an absolute killer. You're right about that.
There's been this recurring theme with the few minutes around half.
Yes.
Notre Dame specializes in it lately.
Yep.
And man, it looked like Texas was getting one over on them, and then Ohio State took it right back.
Yep. Notre Dame's going to need that next week if they've planned to win the national championship. But so, and just to be clear, like when Texas was on, first and goal down by 7, with 2 minutes to go, like the touchdown is the only option. Like you couldn't stop the field goal there. But but the rest of what you were saying is totally true. The other note that I have here is that I can't stand the toss play when it doesn't work. So there was Ohio State had like a 3rd and short, and they threw a toss, and it's like the defense is so fast and they're in the right position and they're on it. So, and you have no shot at converting it. And then that's what really screwed Texas too. It was a second and goal, did a toss play. Now all of a sudden it's 3rd and goal, but you're 8 yards away as opposed to 2, which is a big difference because you cannot run it in from that far away at that point. So it was those 2 toss plays were just horrendous. And I don't understand why, like when you're playing a really good, fast defense, I just can't see that ever working. So I just don't, hindsight's always 20/20, and it's easy to sit back and say like that was a terrible play call, but it felt like those things had no chance at working.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through the game. Was there ever a successful actual toss play? Like I get like
I think there was only 2 toss plays that were called, and they were both for losses.
And we're not talking about outside run. We're talking about a toss.
Yeah,
like versus a handoff, and those toss plays did not seem to work against either of these defenses. And to finish the point of momentum swings, so we had Texas looking like they came back and took the momentum, only to hand it right back to Ohio State at the end of the first half. Then Ohio State comes out and immediately throws an interception in the second half, seemingly handing the momentum back to Texas. But then Texas has a 4-play drive, and then they punt away. Yep. So it's and then Ohio State can't really capitalize on that, so they get another punt. So there was these moments of massive momentum swings. Then punt, make a mistake, punt, and then finally Texas ties it up with a touchdown, and now we're back into like having an actual game. And then again, punt. It was this weird like peaks and valleys all throughout the game.
Yeah.
And
maybe when you get the stop and you get the ball back, like now you're thinking as a fan, you're like, this is our opportunity to take control.
Yeah.
And then it's 3 and out, and then you kick it back and you're like, we've just lost it. We've just lost the game, and then you get the other team 3 and out, and you're like, okay, we're back in it. Now we're getting it, and that happened every time, every possession, just like you said. It was exactly like that.
Yeah, it was. I think this is just, again, we've said it before, it's characteristics of pretty good defenses that you only get so many opportunities. Yes. You just only get so many opportunities, but then Ohio State goes on a 13-play, 88-yard drive, seven and almost 8 minutes off the clock to go up 21-14.
Right. You're asking a lot to stop a team multiple possessions, right? So if they stop them sort of 3 possessions, 4 possessions in a row, and then the 5th one is an 8-minute drive, right? And that's normal, but it's
Did this feel like there was oddly a lot of possessions? There was like 12 punts in this game, not including, and then all of that's like a lot of possessions.
It's a lot of possessions. Both teams were given multiple opportunities to take control, and the defense really stepped up. That's why we started the show with like this game was really about the defense, and they dictated what was happening.
Yeah, I agree. And there's NFL players all over the field on both sides of the ball.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I appreciate that both teams seem to show up to play here. And besides some of these really untimely penalties, specifically on offense, killing their own drives, there wasn't too many egregious penalty things going on. I know that there's a couple of holdings they're always going to complain about, and a pass interference that was or wasn't called. I don't want to get into that. None of them look to me like so egregious that the game turned on those moments. I think all year long, you and I have only really mentioned on the program the South Carolina loss to LSU. And I think the national media, like Josh Pate covered 3, even specifically Josh Pate, people who do not want to talk about penalties, all said that kind of was bad. Like that one of those interceptions that should have gone, and South Carolina should have won that game, which ironically could have had them in the playoffs. Yep. That's the only one where almost everyone agreed that game was the refs really decided that game, like very badly so. But other than that, I don't, bad calls are bad calls. Everyone gets a couple.
No, so I don't think any of these
they even out. Yeah,
I don't think any of them were bad calls. Like they were legitimate. Like they're bad timed penalties,
Yeah.
like the
Mhm.
getting the pass interference so that it's 1st and goal on the 2 is like
Yeah.
is not good, but hey, it worked, right? Because they didn't
Yeah.
score. So
Mhm.
that, that's why you commit that penalty. Because if you don't and it's a touchdown, then
Yep.
that's what you're trying to stop. So I get that. But no, they were all legit penalty. But it comes back to what we said before. It was really good defense. You had multiple possessions. You had
Mhm.
multiple chances to take
Oh,
control of the
yeah.
game. You didn't. So blaming it on like, oh, just that one pass interference in the end zone or that what, it's not that. That's not the reason why you lost. The reason why you lost is you couldn't run the ball. Like you averaged two yards a rush, and which is not going to get it done. And you had multiple possessions in which you couldn't score. So that's what it was. So
Yeah, 10, 11. Yeah, each team had 11 legitimate possessions. I mean,
yeah.
Texas, 14 points on 11 possessions. It's not good enough. It's
But
just
neither team ran the ball well. That's one of the
no,
notes that
not
I
at
had
all.
there. But it
Not at
really
all.
and they made a point of saying it on the show was that on the commentary that it really hurt Texas, like because their offense really is built off the run, like in the play actions, and so you really notice it when they don't have it. So that was tough.
Yeah, they have 58 yards. That's 2 yards per rush. It's not going to work.
No,
And Ewers, you could maybe argue like he put his nose in there on some tough
yeah,
runs,
oh yeah,
but it's
hmm
not his forte. It's kind of Howard obviously has a little bit more of that in him. He's
yeah,
a little bit more capable when he has to use his legs.
yeah,
Obviously, Arch Manning came in for that was a super cool play, by the
yep.
way, and that was close, man. That was an inch or two away from being a fumble, which could have been catastrophic.
Oh yeah, that was
But
that happened a couple times for Texas, right? So it was a kick
oh,
return where the
bounced
guy
right back into his
bounced
hands.
right back
Oh
to him,
yeah.
and then
Hmm.
and then Manning too. That easily could have been ruled
Oh
out
yeah.
or so,
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
so they're very fortunate about the like we said they had enough chances. They had multiple
The
possessions. Those fumbles could have gone the other way, but they didn't,
100%. Yep.
and so they just
The
couldn't get it
Manning
done.
play, I think, would have stood no matter what they called on the field. If they
Yeah.
called that a fumble, they probably would have just left it because it was so close and it wasn't
The
conclusive
second
enough.
replay looked like it was coming out
Really close. But again,
yeah,
not right. It's got to be indisputable.
I
So
know,
they
but
would. I
man,
mean,
it was yeah.
Jeff, it's a game of inches.
It
Jeff.
yeah, absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I mean, I thought it was. I thought the refereeing was
just
okay.
fine.
They
Yeah.
didn't get in the way of this game,
No.
even though the penalties seem out of balance. 9 to Ohio State and 5 to Texas. None of them look like they didn't look like they were picking on one team. I
No.
mean, they were, and they obviously they missed a couple, but they missed a couple on both teams. So
No.
just leave
I
that
hate
alone.
there was so many penalties and there was bad, terrible times,
Yeah.
but that's not the ref's fault. Like because
No.
everyone they called were legitimate. Like you can't not call TreVeyon Henderson punching the guy in the face.
Or the
You
hands to
can't
the or just a false start. A false start's a
Yeah,
false
you gotta
start.
call the false start. You gotta call the pass interference in the end zone when the guy's
Yeah.
holding them. Like
Yeah.
you gotta call the unsportsmanlike conduct when you run over a guy and then point to him. Like that's
God, that
exactly
was
what they're trying.
that and Henderson,
Yeah.
that really bothered me.
Oh,
That players at that level, you just in a game like this, that could be the difference. Just the
yeah.
15 yards that kills the drive.
Now saying like again, the Texas was that was the last drive that they had, and they ended up getting to 1st and goal like on that drive. So you wouldn't necessarily say that that penalty was like really bad for them, but I think it is because if
Terrible.
it put like being between 20 and 30 yards out, like you could score on a pass play like that. And once you get the 1st and goal, you're sort of limited in what offense you can run. And so I think
Well,
that
you
was
just
that
getting in your
changed.
own
Yeah.
team's way,
Yeah.
and it was a great play, and
It was.
just I remember seeing the replay of Ryan Day going over to talk to Henderson, and afterwards, just the look on Day's face when he turns around, he shakes his head, and he didn't say anything, but just the visual on camera, you can tell his body language and the shaking of the head was like, what the hell am I dealing with? Like, what are you doing? Don't you get
Yeah.
where we are? You're like
Yeah.
one of the best. You're a team leader, and
Yeah.
you of all people do that. And
Yeah.
he was like speechless. It was just his body language was like, we're here, everything's here. Like we've got the team, everything's working, and you just choose to do that, and that's
Yeah.
a choice. That's
Yes.
100% a choice. So that was
Exactly.
frustrating as hell. I could see his frustration,
Yeah.
and I get it. As far as the passing yards were identical.
Yes.
289 to 283
Yeah.
total yards, 370 to 340. This really was in fits and starts, they ended up looking pretty much the same. To me, the plays that really stuck out were the Sawyer, obviously he sealed the game, Sawyer's play, and Henderson, the screen pass. I mean, those are just two massive plays that sealed this game.
Very true. Yeah, because otherwise it would be 14-14. Texas went first and goal twice. First and goal because of the penalty, down 7 with 2 minutes to go and couldn't convert, and that's it. And then instead you get a fumble recovery from a defensive end running the length of the field. So
and their only 2 touchdowns were on the same play.
Yeah,
to Blue,
exactly.
Which was awesome. And they couldn't figure it out either time.
No. And
the second one was really bad.
Yeah. No, and in that fumble recovery, good for him, good for Sawyer. That's a great story too. The fact that you were his roommate at Ohio State, back in the day, and no, that'll be an iconic play for Ohio State, shown for a long time.
We got him smack dab in the middle of our thumbnail because that was as soon as that happened, that's the play of the game. He seals it. Did in his post game interview say he almost blacked out? when he had the ball, he's like, wait, I got the ball, I got all just green grass in front of me, just get to the end zone. Yeah, which is that's a once in a lifetime moment to seal a game this big on that play.
You know how many defensive end, like what his life is like on a day-to-day thing is just hitting the left tackle, getting double teamed, trying to stop the filling in the B gap or the C gap. Like that's all he does all the time. And then so to get the ball and run with it is so not part of what they practice or what they do or anything.
Well, I mean, a sack's great.
That's huge.
Strip sack's outstanding. Strip sack fumble recovery is amazing. Yes. And then to house it is that's one of the plays that, no matter how far he goes in the NFL, that's one of the plays of his career.
Yeah,
for
he's
sure.
He's not going to have to buy dinner. If Ohio State goes on to win the national championship, but he's not going to have to buy dinner in Columbus for some time.
I'll pick up his dinner here for that one.
There you go. That's right. Great. Next time you're in Coronado, Mr. Sawyer.
Yeah, I'll take you down to Night and Day Cafe and get an omelet. All right, so Ohio State's marching. It looks like this was the most resistance anyone gave them. And I feel like they both belonged on the field with each other. It was a couple of big plays. And again, this could have just been a big play the other direction.
Absolutely.
The D lines and their skill and the pressure and the havoc they were creating kind of looked similar. Ewers seems kind of limited. He threw a couple of beauty passes here. I just think maybe if he had a bit more, I just keep thinking if he could scramble a little bit better, he could extend it a couple of more of these plays.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like I don't want to lump it all on him. It's just if you, I mean, a game like this, it's going to come down to just a couple of things.
Yeah.
And it maybe if he had a little bit more Riley Leonard in him, like the mobility might have ground out a few plays where they got stopped. I don't know.
I think it's the running game. Close. If they were a little bit more effective in the running game, then that really would have opened stuff up. So I think that would have made a big difference. I think that's what.
I guess given the lack of run game, it would end up even more on his shoulders.
Right, obviously. which is a tough position to be in. Yeah, right? When we talked about that before, like when you're and I think that was one of their, was it Ohio State or Texas where they had one of their drives. It was 8 pass plays in a row. Right, like
I think that would have been probably Texas.
Yeah, so that's when you're in trouble, really, at that point, right? Because you're but I don't want to look ahead too much, but it feels like for Ohio State, Notre Dame, if whichever team can run the ball is going to be that's going to be important because both teams are going to want to do it, and both defenses are good at stopping it. Yeah, and then what can you do about the passing game? Because Notre Dame's always been limited, and Ohio State can be really good. So,
but this has shown that you can take away one of their star players here. It's just can you bottle the other ones up?
If you're the Notre Dame defensive coordinator, you are going to get 8 copies of this game tape and just stare at what happened to Smith and the whole time, because be really, I want to do the same thing.
If you can do that and force Howard to play as good as he played again, and if he does, specifically the throws over the middle he was making in traffic. Good. So, some of those were close too. But so you're going to have to force Howard to have another stellar game if this is a formula for taking away Smith.
Yep.
And if Henderson doesn't go off on that one run, this is not a bad form. 81 yards rushing, that's not good.
Nope. No.
I mean, 58's terrible, but 81's nothing to shout about.
Nope. No.
So Texas has got to be happy with all of that except for that stupid screen pass. That's kind of it.
Yes, exactly. So and they had 2 first and goal with down by 7, less than 2 minutes to go. So it's really, so like you said, it's a game of inches. It's only going to take a couple of possession, like, turnovers or something. And yeah, it's really those, and it's really, that's a sign of a good game. Like 2 really good teams, like where you take advantage when you have it. And if you can't, then you're going to pay. So
do you think the Sawyer strip sack fumble TD, do you think that can be on Ewers at all for a lack of pocket awareness as to what's coming? Or do you just think most quarterbacks, that's happening to most quarterbacks in that moment? I think
that was one of the notes I had, especially in the last 2 minutes. And I don't know if that's because at that point they've abandoned the run game and they were just going like 8 passes in a row. When the defense knows you're just passing, it's way easier to get pressure. And the Texas offensive line was really struggling in the second half. And it looked like multiple Ohio State defensive linemen were getting in there, and like Sawyer got in so fast, like he got around that tackle.
There was kind of two guys were kind of getting in on that one. So he was,
no, I don't think it's on him, like, because you need some time for the receiver to get open. So, and they know that because you're bunched up against the goal line. And so you can play like the tight defense because the passes are going to be, they take away the short pass, right? So it's really hard. No, so he came way too fast. So.
I guess I mean, I don't mean getting sacked. I mean also losing the ball.
Yeah, that sucked. Like that was, but again, it's when that guy is coming free that fast, it's hard to blame anyone for that. But
otherwise he'd need to sense it and then tuck the ball and protect it versus still trying to keep his eyes downfield. And it's just, of all the times for a sack to also have a fumble, that's the one time. Because if it's just a sack, you lose a bunch of yards, but you still live to the next down. But the fumble's what ruined the whole thing.
It looked like what really worked for Texas is when they were like 20, 25 yards out, the hot route was like the running back coming out of the backfield, right? Yeah. So because when people are blitzing like that would be open. But when you're on like the 8-yard line, it's sort of, you can't, there's not enough space. So
he was under duress all game. Ewers had a couple great plays where he was falling and just flipped the ball out at the very, very last minute. Where I was watching.
Oh, that was a great play.
Yeah, I was watching here with Brad, and Brad doesn't watch that much football. He's like, is he supposed to be waiting that long? I'm like, no, well, I don't know if you want to say supposed to, but that's just how it's working. And he's hanging on. And then he just found the outlet at the last minute, like multiple times. And so I think he put everything he had out there. I don't think he left anything on the field. Neither did, it's all out there. Same with Howard. I don't think anyone had a bad game. I think everyone showed up, played like you would expect a semifinal game to be played. I think Golden was in and out of the game a little bit. So could have hurt them, but I mean, man, they're stacked with receivers too, though.
Yeah, they are. So, but no, the only note that I had would have been from a negative in terms of play was that I felt like there was more drop balls than I would have anticipated.
Ooh, yes.
So I think Tate dropped that like perfect touchdown pass.
Judkins just hammered it in right after that.
Yeah, and then also the Bond also had another pass that was
brutal,
right in the hand.
Right in the hands.
So those I wouldn't. Bond had one catch for 8 yards. So if I had to say like someone had a bad game and that brutal drop like that, that
but it wasn't like 5 and 6 or 4 and 5 drops. It was 1 or 2.
But like but critical,
wide open can't. Like that takes away a first down. It just can't. No. Especially when both teams were killing drives from penalties. Yeah. You can't stack a wide open drop on top of that.
No. When moving the ball was such a
premium.
So hard to do. It's such a premium. You're right. Yeah. You can't, the drops are extra killers. So
I guess because besides that 75 yards screen pass, I mean, OSU only had 300 yards. So 300 it's good, but I mean, a bunch of it came on just that one play. So
I
don't know what arrows pointing up for both programs.
Yep, absolutely. Manning, everyone's can't wait for him to start.
Is Ewers going to NFL next year, or what's going on with him? I thought there was still a controversy as if he would come back. He's
a junior. Yeah,
is Manning possibly going to sit again?
Oh, I'd be shocked if that
Texas
happens.
Fans, what's going on there? I just thought it was just going to be Manning next year, but
yeah,
I don't know. I guess maybe he's a bit of a different cat. Maybe he'd be happy to sit. Like
I
maybe
can't
he's in
believe
no
that.
rush.
I think it's either Ewers is leaving or it's
NFL transfer. Either way, it's Manning's team next year.
Yeah, I can't imagine any other way with that happening.
Yeah, yeah. And then for Ohio State, do you think his hot seat is cooled off now, even if he doesn't win the championship? For Ryan Day?
I think it. I mean, I'd like to say yes if they get pasted in the championship game, which I don't think will happen.
Yeah.
That would hurt, you know. But no, I think you made it to the finals like that.
Yeah.
That's right. Like, and you beat really good teams doing it. You know, like they beat the number 1 team and Tennessee
so they would have had to beat what? Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame in a row to win the national championship. That's a pretty good run.
That's a great run.
It's a great run.
Yeah.
And then just Texas. For Texas, this is 13-3. Can't really complain with that season.
No,
and their only losses are to Georgia twice and Ohio State.
Yeah.
Is he going to be is Sarkisian the new James Franklin? Small game Sark?
Oh, I don't. It's a little.
I mean, he obviously had a couple of wins in there too.
Yeah.
But again, you know what? It just occurred to me. People could say, you beat Clemson, and it's not like top tier Clemson, and then you beat ASU, who should have beat you, and then when you finally played a good team, they beat you.
Right, but with your thinking, you're quick with the small game, for the coaches. But it's like, by that definition, like every coach would be a small game coach except for the one that won the national championship, which is sort of an unrealistic way of looking at it because there's 115 teams and so most of them are not going to win it, right? So
no, okay, sorry, I'm just for the detractors.
Yeah,
there's always but this is indicative of college football. Actually, this is something I wanted to talk about. So I was having a thought about this.
Okay.
Because people comment on our channel thinking we're biased. Oh, you hate this team. We're just calling it how we think it might go. So we're
average fans.
Yeah. We just, we've long since set aside thinking the Florida Gators win all the time. We know that. We know they can't, right? Now, we were there.
Yep.
We both went to school there. We both saw the Tebow era. So we know what it's like to have your team actually not ever lose and actually should have won every game for 3 years. And the two they dropped, you're like, okay, they obviously shouldn't have. But 20 years later, we know that was a moment in time.
Yeah.
So, but fans, there's a reason why fan is short for fanatic. Like, you want your team to always win.
Oh, so good point.
But in college, there's always going to be this debate of records and who did you beat and strength of schedule and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But no one talks about that in football. In NFL football. In NFL football, you get to the playoffs and someone can go on a run. Like the 8th seed can win the Super Bowl, and it's happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't. Obviously, the talent is more contracted in the NFL, but it's possible. So I wonder if now that there's a 12-team playoff, maybe some of this chatter of, well, who did you play? And, oh, you drew the easiest bracket and all that stuff will go away. And people will start accepting also in college, it's whoever peaks at the right time and goes on a run.
Yeah, I agree.
That might actually change from, well, you didn't deserve to be there and you beat all the easy teams and people arguing over whose roster's worth more money and all this stuff. I think that will start falling away because before it really was, is my 11-1 better than your 11-1? And you can never compare it. In the NFL, you kind of all play similar teams. So here, that part falls away because that just gets you to the 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
Now you got to get through the 12 teams, and then maybe people start accepting you peaked at the right time. And there'll still be a debate, but at least it might start changing to accepting the fact that it's about this moment, these 4 games.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's what's going to happen. Nothing can trump winning. So at the end of the day, Ohio State beat Texas, beat Oregon, beat Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So whoever that all of a sudden that Michigan game means less, that loss.
Right.
Because that they're winning in the playoffs. So
Okay. Well, I mean, you got anything else? It was
nope. We had the Ohio State -6, so we won our bet. So
yep.
If you're betting with us,
that's good.
Good job. Congratulations.
Yes. All right. So I guess we'll have to do a pick'em show for the
We'll do it next week.
A preview and a pick'em show for the championship game.
We've got to wait a week Monday, which feels like a long time, but
it does.
You know what? I'm happy for Love and for everyone to get healthy and stuff, because some people look pretty beat up. So I feel like
it'll be great if all the best players actually can play and are at full speed in the championship game.
To the defensive guy, what was his name? The Tuamolau.
Well, he got back into the game.
He did, but for sure his ankle's not 100%. So I'm glad he's got a week off too.
Yes. For everyone that got banged up, hopefully they'll be back at full speed. Yeah. All right, so come back to the channel and check out our review of the NFL playoffs this weekend, and also our pick'em show for the national championship game next week. We'll catch you later.